Hello, I'm Dr. Maury Markman from City of Hope, and I would like to briefly discuss in this session and in the next two a topic that is always timely. And the general discussion is on ethical considerations in clinical research. Of course, whenever you talk about ethics in clinical research and you talk about the foundational issues, you have to start with, of course, the unbelievable horrors. Horrors is the only other word I can't think of, went on during the Nazi era. And from there, of course, as relates to specifically the question of medical experimentation, the Nuremberg trials and the foundational Nuremberg Code. As a brief aside, a comment has been made, attributed to Alfred North Whitehead, who has stated that in all of Western philosophy, after Plato, everything is simply a footnote, making the point about the role of Plato. And I would suggest very strongly that you can make this comment when you refer to all of biomedical ethics after the Nuremberg Code. The foundation was the Nuremberg Code. And I would encourage all readers, it's short, it's straightforward, it's profoundly powerful, and it is foundational. Interestingly, the reason the Nuremberg Code was actually written, obviously going back now 70 years, is that when the Nuremberg trials were being put together, when they were being organized, and there was, what are the rules that we're going to follow, it was recognized that, in fact, to that point, there had never been a foundational document written as to what are the ethics of medical experimentation, medical care, what are ethical foundations. The concept of informed consent didn't exist, but did after the Nuremberg Code. As another point, in fact, the Nuremberg Code never became law anywhere. It is not a document that is a legal document. It is a foundational code of ethics, which should be understood by all who participate in research. In fact, there have been multiple other documents that have occurred since that time, multiple national, international agreements that are actually updated often because of changes in medical practice and medical research. But again, the foundation of the Nuremberg Code is there. 2 points. Informed consent, adequate informed consent, appropriate informed consent regarding the potential risks and benefits of participation in a research project are absolutely mandatory. Nothing else can be said, absolutely mandatory. And someone who agrees to become a research subject in a study always has the opportunity at any point to leave that research. There is no obligation to continue if one decides side effects are too risky or any other concerns that that individual may have. Of course, since the Nazi era, nothing we've seen in the world of medical research can approach that. However, there have been multiple examples, including in the United States, where one can say completely unethical, unacceptable, illegal efforts were undertaken. Of course, the Tuskegee experiment, where African Americans were infected with syphilis, were not told of the availability or given the opportunity to receive penicillin, which was curative, is prominent in this regard because the researchers wanted to study the natural history of syphilis. Obviously, one cannot say anything other than this was horrible to the core. But there are other examples, in fact, closer to home in the oncology space. In the 1960s, there were truly infamous experiments that were conducted by the defense agencies looking at the effects of radiation. In fact, there were experiments at the University of Cincinnati where there was clearly evidence of forged consent no informed, no understanding or patient, the individuals were not told of the risk of whole body radiation. They wanted to study the effects of radiation, but there was no informed consent. And of course, there were also other examples that are within the in the realm of what we might consider other forms of research, medical types of research. Quite infamous story. It's not a story, it's a true event. The Jewish nursing home scandal, where remarkably, individuals of a Jewish nursing home in New York, in the area of New York, were given live cancer cells to test to see what happened to them. Obviously, the adequacy of informed consent was non-existent. Remarkably, at that time, the members of the scientific establishment actually defended, to some extent, the researchers who were conducting this research at the Jewish nursing home. I don't think that could have even remotely been possible today. But remember, this was still after World War II. We're talking about in the early 1960s. So clearly, the United States has examples of types of experimentations which we should both condemn and, quite frankly, be ashamed of. There are other examples that are closer to home and closer in time, and I want to discuss those in a little more depth, particularly in the cancer arena, in the next several talks. And I thank you for your attention.